This is perhaps the most ridiculous thing to not have correct in a simulation basketball game. I could understand it in an arcade mode, but in a game that's trying to simulate what actually happens in real life, why are guys allowed to go on Play Now Online or My Team? Why are they allowed to get on these modes, make their substitutions manual, and then never make any actual substitutions, and abuse the timeout system so that the players don't get tired? So in case I need to simplify that for anybody, it's basically the player does not make any substitutions the entire game, and then at some point, they call consecutive timeouts. Have you ever been playing online against somebody, and then all of a sudden you notice that they call like 2 or 3 timeouts in a row? I used to think that was a glitch until I started streaming, and a couple of my viewers put me onto it that what they were really doing is what is essentially a glitch. So it's if they're not going to sub their players, they're just going to call a bunch of timeouts back to back to replenish their energy. And that's what this guy did. This is a My Team game, and I'm going to put you on to his entire game plan, not just the no subbing. I'm going to explain how that plays into it, but I'm also going to show what else he did to make this game really miserable and slow. It was a grindhouse. So first of all, he did the substitution glitch, and I think that's absolutely ridiculous. First of all, I'm one of the guys who I like to get online and use some form of strategy, and I also like to play the game how it's actually played in real life, which is why I call plays, and it is why I make subs, especially in My Team, because I have a bunch of cards and I want to use different people in different lineups. That's more fun. But then you go against these guys, and the problem is they'll have something like, okay, he's running Scottie Pippen at point guard and he's got Giannis on the floor as well. So just because of that, I always have to have somebody on the floor. I have to have their matchups on the floor because there's only a couple of players that can play that position and still match them. So for instance, I had to keep Klay Thompson on Pippen because Pippen was way too big for Westbrook, and I had to keep Giannis on Giannis. Otherwise, he was just gonna blow by whoever or just abuse the size. So in the older days, what would have been able to happen is I would have been able to keep making adjustments. See, because back then you had a pause timer, but you didn't have a limit of how many times you could actually pause. And that's one of the worst things about online in general this year, is that they added a limit to how much you could pause, and each pause only has, 30 seconds to it, I believe. So you have to rush to make any adjustments that you want to make, and you can't keep doing it over and over again. So therefore, when you run into a guy like this, I've just got to leave their matchup on the floor and play ball with him. But then you might say, okay, well, you guys are both then taking advantage of the fact that you don't have to sub, right? His timeouts theoretically should replenish my players too. But here's what he was doing, because his lineup, the lineup that he was running, was a bit favorable to mine. So that was the other part of his game plan. This is the most defensive team I've ever played online. Got Scottie Pippen at the point, he's running Draymond Green, Giannis, and then Jimmy Butler. So right there, he's got 4 amazing defenders. But on top of that, he was playing off-ball defense pretty much the entire game. And this is actually a tip that I saw from another YouTuber, and it was basically talking about taking advantage of the game's strong defense. And so as you're going to see in some of these examples on the screen, it felt like my players were playing in quicksand, because the CPU defense is so strong, especially for guys that are actually good at it. When you're trying to run pick and rolls or pick and pops, you can't even use the screen because the guy is attached to you like glue. You can't get by him. So we already know there's the one part where players that aren't that good at defense in real life, they are pretty good in 2K19. Now look at the guys that he has on the floor. This was like a combination of trying to run through mud while also trying to get through a brick wall. But on his part, the way this worked was that he didn't have to expend any energy to get everything he was getting on offense. Most of what he was getting were steals. He was able to get out in transition with Giannis, but he didn't have to expend any energy. The CPU was playing all of his defense, and they were doing it without being extra, without going side to side. They were just playing it perfectly. So his team is a defensive stalwart, no energy being expended, and then he didn't make subs. Actually, he made 1 sub the entire game. Periodically, he would switch out Chuck Persons for Dwayne Wade. That's the only change he made the entire game. Meanwhile, I was getting frustrated because it threw me totally off my game. I've got really good players that come off the bench, I've got really good lineups, but again, not having time to make adjustments, I just kind of had to have Klay and Giannis on the floor at all times. And I had to keep my best offensive players out there as well, which is my starting lineup because that was the best chance I had against his defense. But I eventually made him crack. He got the lead up to 13 points if I remember correctly, but I was able to keep it together. The thing that I was thinking was he wasn't really doing anything special, not playing his own D, nothing really going on offense except transition, so I just ran to my last resort. When absolutely nothing else is working, I've got no momentum, I'm down double digits, I just full court press and I start double teaming. That's a last resort simply because you are really leaving yourself at risk to have players being wide open, or in the full court press. Well, in the old days, a full court press used to be really easy to blow by. It actually works a little bit better in 2K19 considering the defense is much stronger. And I got this dude to crack, because what I found out by doing that was, A, he really did not know how to get up the floor. With pressure everywhere, it really just made him uncomfortable. And then B, when he was just dribbling, he was doing a lot of dribbling. When he wasn't in transition, he would just dribble at the top of the key and call a pick with Giannis. So I just started double teaming him prematurely. And then he was just making the most predictable passes he could make. This doesn't work against everybody because a lot of people, you know, they'll see the double team coming and they can see 3 or 4 passes ahead. They know where not to throw it, they know where the defense is going. But this guy was going exactly where I thought he would. Then I got some breaks where some players of his were in some really bad spots on the floor. So I was able to double and he really didn't have an angle to get to the open person. So then the final thing that happened, I really made a strategic move at the end. Even though my better players were the starters, their energy was like in the 60s and 70s because I was trying to turbo the entire game because I couldn't get around his defense, so I was expending so much energy. But I finally said I'm gonna stop being stubborn and I went with my bench. And the fresh legs off the bench, they pretty much they really swarmed him on defense. And for a couple of plays on offense, it just got him really rattled. They were running circles around him. But overall, it was just a really miserable game because I was having to do so much just to stay close, and his guys were using no energy, playing amazing defense with no subs. There's absolutely no excuse for this on 2K's part because this is something that was actually in NBA 2K18 as well. Back when I would stream, we ran into a couple of players like this, and it was always frustrating. It basically turns into a game of who can out-cheese who. Because let's be real, that's what it is. There's probably some teams out there that wish they could just play their starters all game. I know the Pelicans wish they could just go starting 5 the entire game, nobody gets tired. But yeah, people bring this online and it just completely ruins the fun. This was a miserable grinded out game. And it felt so good to hit this last shot with Embiid. Everyone's reaction on the floor with their hands up, that was my exact reaction. I probably could have fouled Jimmy Butler on that 3-point attempt, but I was not about to leave my fate up to 2K. There was no way I wasn't going to contest that. But after all the cheesing he did, the no sub, the off ball the entire game, he got cheesed a bit here. Look at this. I watched this play over and over again because I wanted to see how Joel got that wide open. He sets the screen on Butler right here, because originally I was trying to go to Klay Thompson, but when Embiid pops out to the 3-point line, look at Jimmy Butler. It's almost like he just got stuck. It's like Chuck Person was trying to go out to Klay Thompson, I guess. I'm assuming Scottie Pippen right here was trying to get to Westbrook, who I did not see at all. I wasn't going to throw that pass. That would have been a turnover. Jimmy would have probably stole it. But Jimmy just, I don't know what he did. He actually went back to Westbrook, and Pippen went down there too to Westbrook. I don't know, his defensive AI right here, this is this is some terrible defensive logic. I'm not even gonna lie, that was a satisfying win just because of how hard it was to get, but I don't see Jimmy Butler and Scottie Pippen making these type of mistakes right here. This is really just collision. This is collision just messing up everything. Players trying to go somewhere. I see now Chuck Persons actually did go to Klay Thompson, which he didn't need to do because Giannis already covered him, so he should have actually probably taken LeBron. Man, their defense was all jumbled, and I'm not sure that was his fault. Looking back at the original game tape, he was controlling Giannis actually. He was manually controlling Giannis to get out to Klay. So yeah, all of that jumble, everything that got jumbled down there, that was all the computer. Hey, he deserved it though. Playing your starting 5 the entire game, That's my equivalent to taking charges at half court. You deserve that L. Just one more interesting note. I did notice in the picture his bench was absolute ass, so that's probably why he didn't make any subs. But then that causes me to question, how did we even get into the same game? Because look at our overalls. I heard overalls were determined by your starting lineup, but no, he actually has a really good starting lineup, he just has no bench. So his overall is a 68, my overall is a 98, and I have a deep bench. I've got Blake Griffin on my bench, Karl Anthony Towns, Oladipo, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Tyson Chandler. Like, I'm pretty much 12 deep with a lot of good guys. How did we even get into the same match? I don't know. But until this gets fixed, this is gonna be known as the sub cheese. Dudes are trying way too hard to cheese at this game, man.